Welcome to Missile Industries, episode 4 of my Kawasaki trainwreck project. Now, on today's episode, I'm going to put that tank back on this bike after I sort out all the tank related issues. But that's not going to happen until after I put these plugs in first, because the bike's got a bit of a miss. And on the weekend, my mate Peter said, "Oh, these plugs might sort that out," and he gave them to me for nothing. How good is that? Memory serves me correctly, these air boxes are a giant pain in the butt to get out. You've got to take the cover off, and then you've got to undo the air box from the throttle trumpets. Then you've got to rotate it around 90 degrees and then pull it out between the frame spars. And a dead set doesn't look like it'll come out until it comes out. Okay, right away I can see a glaring problem with the choke butterflies. One of these choke butterflies, and these are just for the cold start, one of the choke butterflies is bent. Look at that, bent right across. It's a bit of a worry. Alright, I have replaced the plugs. That one there looked like it wasn't firing at all because it was the most oily. These ones here were all pretty oily. And this one here was oily and rusty. And as you may be able to gather, those plugs are shot. So after days, my O-ring has finally shrunk down enough for me to fit it back into the tank seal. But I've had a problem with my ZX10R tank solution. Since these holes are orientated to have the pump only face a certain way, my pump intake faces the airbox, and I won't be able to get the hose onto the pump with its orientation this way. So that means I'm forced to use this rusty crusty pump, which is annoying because the plug is stuffed. There we go, that pump flange is nice and tight, all of the bolts are the right length, so hopefully that seals. So one of these tank filler cap holes is overzealously painted over by whoever painted it, so that's not going to help the tank seal either. So I'm going to run drill bits by hand into these threads to hopefully deburr it. Obviously I'm not using power tools because I don't want to blow up. Carefully, now that I've drilled the hole out as far as I can get it with drill bits, I'm going to just carefully chase this thread out with a tap. Alright, press down. 3 bolts holding the petrol cap on, proving the chances of this tank actually sealing. Time to add a litre of fuel. As you might have noticed, the bike has a black tank on it today, because this tank over here, not only is it very rusty, that the pump is very rusty too. So what I've decided to do is leave that tank over there and not use it at all. Instead, I've grabbed this tank, complete with cap, for $150 today. I've already drilled out the lock so I can use it, so that's good. And this is a tank off a 2007 ZX10. They are the same, broadly speaking, except for the fuel cap. The fuel caps have a different depth, so you can't just swap them over. What I'm going to do next is drill out my ZX6R pump flange to match the pump flange on this tank, so I can use the ZX6R pump, which has been stored in a box for years now, rather than the rusty one in that tank. To get the orientation right for the output for the fuel pump, it would have to be like that, and that would mean all 5 of these bolts would not line up. But what I've found, if I canter it slightly off to this direction, like 7 o'clock, I only have to re-drill 2 of these flange bolts and that should work. So I can kink this hose a little bit through that span and it should still be just as effective. Alright, here's my 07 ZX10R tank ready to go with my 2003 ZX6R pump. I re-drilled these 2 holes here to line it with the base plate. I have stolen the seal out of the outgoing, somewhere over there outside, outgoing white rusty fuel tank with its rusty pump is here. I'm going to shelve this pump because look at the state of it. Very grotty. I have used the pump to make reference circuits for this pump because the color coding is different from the wiring. So I made a reference for this pump where it plugs into the old loom. I've cut that plug off because it's shot, and I have grafted on this plug which perfectly matches the wiring loom of the ZX10. It's coming from that wiring loom over there in the box. So all the colours match, it all makes sense. So I should theoretically better plug the tank in, have the pump power up, and the tank will be rust free and the pump will be rust free, which is what we want. I have reassembled my airbox. I have put my spark plugs back in. I still have all the parts hanging off the side of the engine for the frame structures. The bike is ready to start up. It is moment of truth time. Is it going to run like a bike that's thrown a big end bearing or have a rod knock or anything like that, or is it going to start up like a Kawasaki ZX10 should and purr to life? Let's go. That's the sound of the tank priming. That's a good sign. That means my fuel pump is working. Yes! Alright, summary time for episode 4. I started the episode with intentions to use the white tank, possibly put the ZX6R pump into it, possibly put the ZX10R pump into it, but after having a look on Facebook Marketplace, I discovered there was a guy about 20 k's from me wrecking out an 07 version of one of these, so I grabbed his tank. And that made life a lot easier because his tank, while it's got the tiny little dent in it, it's actually rust free on the inside. And a perfect candidate for this project because the price was right. So, plugs are done, new pump, new tank, and it's all back together again to the extent that it will run and I can move it around. That is a great outcome for this project, and I've got the thing running by episode 4. So pretty damn pleased about that. The punt that I took 6 days ago when I picked this bike up was that it wasn't completely shot, and it's looking now like it's just a service in a roadworthy way, even though it's not pretty, but who cares about that?
Cheapest ZX10 ever.